Welcome to the Book of Jubilees, the story of creation, humanity, and God's covenant. From Adam and Eve, to Noah and the flood, to Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, and Moses, this ancient text reveals God's guidance and the unfolding history of the world. Prepare to hear the stories of faith, trials, and divine purpose that shape generations. Let us begin with the creation of the world. In the beginning, there was only darkness. The earth was formless, empty, and silent. Nothing moved, nothing stirred. Only the Spirit of God hovered above the waters, waiting. In a burst of divine power, God spoke, "Let there be light." And suddenly, light exploded across the darkness. Day was separated from night. Shadows fled, and the first dawn appeared. God stretched the sky above the waters, separating the waters below from the waters above. The heavens arched like a giant vault. Clouds gathered, rivers flowed, and the winds whispered across the land. Mountains rose proudly, their peaks reaching for the sky. Valleys stretched between them, and fertile plains spread endlessly. God spoke, and the land burst with life. Plants, flowers, and trees of every shape and color. Fruits glistened, seeds sprouted, and the earth sang with growth. God created creatures of the earth, sky, and sea. Birds filled the heavens with wings of color. Fish swam through the oceans, shining like jewels. Lions roared across the plains. Deer leapt gracefully among the trees, and each creature was perfect in its kind. Then God formed a man, Adam, from the dust of the earth. He breathed life into him, and Adam became a living soul. God planted a magnificent Garden Eden and placed Adam there to care for it. But Adam needed a companion. So God created Eve from Adam's very rib and brought her to him. Together, they walked with God in the cool of the day. God said, "You may eat from any tree in the garden, but the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for the day you eat of it, you shall surely die." And so, the first day ended. Light and darkness, life and potential, all were set in motion. The world awaited its unfolding story, and the story of humanity was about to begin. Adam and Eve lived in joy, tending the garden and naming the animals. Their days were filled with laughter, wonder, and the beauty of creation. Every morning they walked among the trees, listening to the birds and watching rivers sparkle in the sunlight. But one day a serpent, clever and cunning, slithered close. It whispered to Eve, "Did God truly say you shall not eat from every tree?" Eve hesitated, uncertain, and the serpent continued, "Eat of this tree, and you will become like God, knowing good and evil." Eve looked at the fruit, beautiful and tempting. She reached out, took a bite, and shared it with Adam. Immediately, their eyes were open. They felt shame and fear, and they sewed fig leaves to cover themselves. God came walking in the garden and called, "Where are you?" Adam replied, ashamed, "We were naked and we hid ourselves." God pronounced judgment. Eve would experience pain in childbirth. Adam would toil for food, and death would enter the world. Yet God also promised hope. From her seed shall come one who will crush the serpent's head. Adam and Eve left the garden, carrying the weight of sin, but God's mercy guided them. They had children, Cain, Abel, and Seth, and humanity began to multiply. Cain, filled with jealousy, killed Abel, and the first blood was shed. Through Seth's line, righteousness endured, a light in a world growing dark. Humanity learned the cost of choice and the power of hope, and the story of humankind continued, marked by the struggle between disobedience and faith. As humanity multiplied across the earth, some of God's angels, called the Watchers, looked down upon the daughters of men. "They are beautiful," they said, and they longed for them. Against God's command, they descended to the earth and took wives from among humans. The Watchers taught mankind forbidden knowledge, crafts of war, sorcery, astrology, and deceit. They showed humans how to forge weapons, use charms, and manipulate one another. The world grew dark with corruption as power and sin spread among men. From the unions of the Watchers and human women came giants, mighty and terrifying. Their steps shook the earth, and their strength brought fear. Violence filled the land. Men oppressed one another, stealing, killing, and spreading chaos. The cries of humanity reached up to the heavens. God's heart was grieved. The earth is filled with violence because of them, he said. I will cleanse it, but I will preserve the righteous. Noah, blameless among his generation, shall survive, for he will walk with me. And so the stage was set for judgment and salvation. The giants roamed the land, humanity struggled under corruption, and God prepared a plan to protect the faithful and restore the world to order. God spoke to Noah, "Build an ark of gopher wood, make it 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Bring 2 of every living creature, male and female, and your family, that life may continue." Noah obeyed. He worked tirelessly, cutting wood, hammering beams, and gathering provisions for the great task ahead. People mocked him, calling his warnings foolish. Yet Noah remained steadfast, trusting in God's promise. Then the heavens opened. Rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights. Waters rose, covering mountains and valleys. Every living thing outside the ark perished. The storm roared and the world seemed lost. Inside the ark, Noah and his family waited, surrounded by the animals, safe in God's protection. They endured the flood, guided by faith and obedience. When the waters receded, the ark rested upon the mountains. Noah and his family emerged, giving thanks and offering sacrifices to God. God spoke, "I establish my covenant with you and your descendants. Never again shall a flood destroy the earth." A rainbow appeared, shining across the sky, a symbol of this eternal promise. Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, began to repopulate the earth. Nations were formed, each according to God's plan, and humanity had a chance to begin anew under divine guidance. Humanity multiplied and settled in a fertile plain. They said to one another, "Let us build a city and a tower that reaches the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, so that all will see our greatness." They worked together, hewing stones and shaping bricks, building higher and higher. Their pride and ambition grew with each level of the tower, as if they could reach the very throne of God. But God looked down and saw their hearts. "Behold, they are one people with one language. Nothing they plan will be impossible for them," he said. "Their pride must be humbled, so that they may learn humility and scatter across the earth." God confused their language, and suddenly they could no longer understand one another. Confusion spread among them, and the great work of the tower came to a halt. People scattered in every direction, forming nations and cultures, speaking many languages. The plain lay quiet, the unfinished tower, a reminder that human ambition cannot surpass divine will. From this moment, the diversity of nations and tongues began, fulfilling God's command to fill the earth and live under his guidance. Generations passed, and God called Abraham. "Leave your country, your people, and your father's house, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and through you all nations will be blessed." Abraham obeyed without hesitation. He took his wife Sarah and his nephew Lot, and they traveled through deserts, plains, and rugged lands, guided only by God's promises. Each step required faith, for the future was uncertain and the journey long. Along the way, Abraham faced trials that tested his trust. At one moment, God commanded him to take his son, Isaac, and offer him as a burnt offering. Trembling, Abraham prepared to obey, yet at the final moment, God intervened and provided a ram instead. Through Abraham's obedience, God sealed a covenant. His descendants would inherit the land, be a holy people, and follow his law. Abraham became a model of faith, showing that trust in God can overcome fear, uncertainty, and even the hardest trials. From Abraham's family would come nations, blessings, and the unfolding story of God's plan for humanity. Isaac, the son of Abraham, married Rebekah. Together they had twins, Esau, red and hairy, and Jacob, quiet and thoughtful. Even before their birth, God declared, "The older shall serve the younger." Jacob grew into a cunning yet faithful man. Through patience, cleverness, and divine guidance, he obtained his father's blessing and the birthright that was meant for Esau. Fearing his brother's anger, Jacob fled from his home and journeyed to Haran. There he labored for his uncle Laban, facing years of hardship and toil. During this time, he married Leah and Rachel, and through them fathered 12 sons. These 12 sons would become the foundation of the tribes of Israel, forming the people through whom God's covenant would continue. Jacob's life was marked by struggle, perseverance, and faith, showing that God's plan unfolds even through human imperfection and trials. Through Jacob, the promise given to Abraham was carried forward, linking generations and shaping the destiny of nations. Joseph, the favored son of Jacob, had dreams that foretold greatness. In his visions, his family bowed to him, and he knew that God had a plan for his life. But his brothers, jealous and angry, could not bear his favor. They sold him to merchants bound for Egypt, and Joseph was taken far from his family. In Egypt, Joseph was bought by Potiphar, an important official. God's presence remained with him, and he prospered in all that he did. Yet false accusations led Joseph into prison, a place of darkness and uncertainty. Even there, Joseph's faith did not waver. He interpreted dreams for Pharaoh's servants and eventually for Pharaoh himself. Recognizing Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh appointed him as governor over the land. Through Joseph, Egypt was prepared for a great famine. His family too was preserved, and reconciliation came as he faced his brothers again. God's plan, though hidden in trials, unfolded perfectly, showing that faith and patience can turn hardship into salvation. Through Joseph, the covenant promise continued, linking the family of Abraham to God's unfolding plan for the nations. Centuries passed, and the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt. God raised Moses, born to a Levite family, and saved from death as a baby. He was nurtured in Pharaoh's palace, growing strong in wisdom and courage. One day, God appeared to Moses in a burning bush. "I have seen the affliction of my people," God said. "Go, lead them out of Egypt." Moses obeyed. With God's power, he performed signs and plagues, showing Pharaoh that God's will cannot be resisted. At last, Pharaoh released the Israelites, and they journeyed into the wilderness. A pillar of cloud guided them by day, and a pillar of fire led them by night. At Mount Sinai, God gave Moses the law. Angels conveyed the divine words, teaching the people how to live in righteousness, observe the Sabbath, and maintain the covenant that God had established from the beginning. Through Moses, God's guidance and law were made clear, showing that obedience and faith lead to deliverance, and that God's covenant endures through all generations. The history of the world unfolded in cycles called Jubilees, 49-year periods that mark the passage of time. From Adam to Moses, God's plan progressed carefully, guiding humanity through every generation. Angels watched over mankind, delivering warnings and revelations. Those who obeyed God's law prospered. Those who rebelled suffered consequences. Each life, each choice, carried meaning in the unfolding story. The covenant of God remained firm. He promised blessing, protection, and guidance to those who walked in his ways. The faithful were guided toward righteousness, and through them, his plan for the world continued. The Book of Jubilees reminds us that, from creation to the giving of the law, God's hand has shaped the world. Every choice matters. Every life has purpose. Faith, obedience, and trust in God endure through all time. And so the story of humanity, from the dawn of creation to the covenant given to Moses, shows that God's guidance and love are eternal, and his covenant calls all generations to walk in his ways.